Today's topic is the Fool card. I'm just going to go ahead and show you the image of the Fool in the major arcana in the deck that I use, and the Fool in the deck that Ian uses. Right, I hope that showed okay on camera. Moving right along, I'm going to start today by going into the history of the card, and then we'll talk a little bit about its various interpretations in different systems, and then the divinatory interpretations that work best for me when I provide readings. Please keep in mind that just because it works for me doesn't mean it's what has to work for you. Take everything I say with a massive grain of salt, and as always, your guess is as good as mine. Moving right along, let's talk a little bit about the history. In the decks before the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was created, the Fool was almost always unnumbered. There were a few exceptions to this. Some old decks, including the 15th century Solibusca deck, labeled the card with a 0, and the 18th century Belgian decks labeled the Fool using Roman numerals as the 22nd card. In the older decks used for playing games rather than for more esoteric or divinatory purposes, the Fool was almost always completely apart from the sequence of trumps. However, there is some historic precedence for regarding it as both the lowest trump and the highest trump. Traditionally, the major arcana in esoteric or divinatory tarot cards are numbered with Roman numerals. The Fool is almost always numbered with the 0, which is actually one of the Arabic numerals. In the earliest known depiction of the Fool card, from the Visconti-Sforza deck from 1450 CE, the Fool is depicted as a card of folly, tattered and suffering from a goiter. The image on the Visconti-Sforza deck was likely based on Giotto's image of Foolishness found in the Arena Chapel at Padua. In the Tarot of Ferrara, the Fool is depicted as either a carnival performer or as a carnival king, wearing a motley tunic hung with bells and carrying 2 scepters. In these early decks, the Fool may have been influenced by the tradition of the wood woes, or the wild man. This may be related to the early Italian idea of the Misero, the lowest and first of the series of the Tarochhi of Mantegna, a series of prints representing societal roles, allegorical figures, and deities. Misero depicted a beggar leaning on a staff. Both the influence of the society roles and the image of the Fool in the Tarochhi of Mantegna are similar to the one found in the German Hofamterspiel court officials pack, one of the earliest packs of playing cards on record preserved in its entirety with all 48 cards intact. The Hofamterspiel deck, commissioned by Ladislaus the Posthumous, King of Hungary and Bohemia and Duke of Austria from 1453 to 1457 CE, is a series of illustrations with their names written in archaic German, which depict My cat is jumping around and trying to steal popcorn from Ian, and it's very distracting. Depict various figures who perform court functions during the late Middle Ages, together with the values of the cards, numbered 1 to 10 in Roman numerals, except for the king and queen, which have no number and are also the only 2 subjects that do not state the character's occupation. In all 4 suits, card 1 features a fool, Nar, or the female equivalent, Narin. The image of Nar is a barefoot man in robes with bells on his hood carrying a bagpipe. Narin is also depicted barefoot, though without an instrument or walking staff. In Italian language decks, and in many of the older decks, including the aforementioned Visconti-Sforza deck, the Fool is titled Il Matto, which is often translated either as the madman or as the beggar. The Tarot of Marseille, which uses Le Mat, which also means the madman, depicts a figure similar to the Misero or Hofamterspiel's Nar, or a jongleur, a medieval French term that is the origin for the English words juggler and jester. The figure carries a bundle of belongings on a stick slung over their back, but in this case, the figure is being chased by an animal who has torn his clothing. In the earliest surviving known tarot of the Marseille tradition, the Jean Noblet tarot created in 1650 CE, the Fool is called Le Fauve, and an animal, a dog, is attacking the figure's genitals. In the later Jean Dodal deck, the animal, still depicted as a dog, is less graphically attacking the Fool's behind, rather than the Fool's genitalia. In the engraving of the Fool from the Court de Gébélin's Le Monde Primitif in 1781 CE, illustrated by Mademoiselle Lenotte, the attacking dog was reinterpreted as a tiger, despite Court de Gébélin's belief that the deck was Egyptian in origin. Perhaps he didn't realize that tigers are not actually native to Egypt. In the first version of the Etteila style decks, Les Jeux de les Princesses Tarot, or Tarot Egyptiens, designed in 1843 by Larembert under the pseudonym Johann Trismegistus, the animal is an African leopard biting the calf of the Fool. In the French decks that followed later, the image of the Fool is a jester or a bard or troubadour rather than a beggar, very reminiscent of the Joker and a deck of regular playing cards. In the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck and other esoteric decks created specifically for occult use in systems of spiritual and/or magical practice, such as cartomancy, the Fool is shown as a young man walking unknowingly toward a brink of a precipice. One moment. The Fool's varying place and role. In occult tarot, such as the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the Fool is usually considered part of the major arcana. This is not true in tarot games, wherein the Fool's role in most games was or is to be independent of both the plain suit cards and the trump cards. In those games, the Fool card does not belong to either category. As such, most tarot decks originally made for game playing do not assign a number to the Fool, indicating its rank in the suit of trumps, which is why it has none in some decks. Waite gave the Fool the number 0, but in his book the Fool is placed between Judgment, number 20, and the World, number 21. The only traditional game deck that numbers the Fool 0 is the Tarochhi Piemontes, probably butchered that, a type of tarot deck of Italian origin derived from the Tarot de Marseille, but made reversible for modern game playing. It is the most common tarot playing set currently in use in Italy. In almost all tarot games, the Fool is one of the most valuable cards. One explanation behind the wide interpretation of the Fool card in tarot spreads, from very negative to very positive, is that in the original tarot card games, such as the French tarot, Tarochhi, and the Tarochhi, the Fool card was sometimes called the excuse. It was the Joker, the wild card, a trick card that could excuse the player from either following suit or playing a trump card. Winning a trick containing the Fool card could yield special bonuses. The Fool could also call for all of the cards to be picked up and reshuffled, thus a massive change, erasing the past of the game, for good or ill, depending upon the perspective of the individual players, before the game could start again. Before or after the trick playing of Tarochhi, the Fool and the Magician were called the Contatori, the counters, acting as a limited form of wild cards. They could be used separately or together to fill in missing gaps in combinations or to extend them, but they couldn't fill in 2 consecutive gaps in sequential combinations, nor could they replace the highest trump or kings. Both cards could be used in every sequence, but the Fool could not be captured, while the Magician was vulnerable to capture. The player could then be more likely to take risks using the Fool card, while holding the Magician for more careful and judicious use. The use of the Fool in the tarot game seems to have heavily influenced how the Fool is used for cartomancy, and that the Fool is often interpreted as a wild chance to fly or to fall, to stumble in folly, or to skip merrily past disaster. All right, one moment while I figure out where I am in my notes. Okay. Basic meaning across various systems. I think that's where I am now. And then we will get into how Havencraft interprets it when we teach tarot classes. any second now. Okay, so we'll start with the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is by far the most prevalent. Walking forward with a light step, as if the earth and all its forces can do little to restrain him, a young man in troubadour dress pauses at the brink of a precipice. He seems to not notice that there's a steep drop before him. His eyes instead are up on the expanse of the sky. His act of progress is paused. No motion is indicated, though the dog at his side still bounds forward. The edge before him holds no terror. He has either not noticed it or is not concerned for it, certain instead that he will proceed forward into the sky, rather than to the depths below. Whether by naivete or wisdom, he has no fear. In the Rider-Waite tarot interpretation, the Fool signifies folly, mania, foolishness, extravagance, and intoxication. Reversed or ill-dignified in Rider-Waite-Smith interpretation, the Fool represents negligence, absence, carelessness, apathy, nullity, vanity, self-obsession, and loss. In Thoth, the system created by Aleister Crowley, the Fool card instructs the subject to be innocent, for all ways are lawful to the free. It instructs that folly is the key to initiation, that the subject should pursue a path in life wherein they are neither man nor woman, beholden to nothing, wandering alone to seek wisdom through rapture. In spiritual matters, the Thoth interpretation of the Fool instructs the subject to transcend earthly or mundane matters, to seek idea and thought and impulse. In material matters, the Thoth interpretation holds the card, especially if ill-dignified or reversed, to signify madness, eccentricity, and mania. In positions impacting the present and future, the Thoth interpretation holds the cards as representing a new path or beginning, an impulse or impact upon a person's life, coming from a strange or divine source. Golden Dawn. In the Tarot of the Golden Dawn, the Fool represents the spirit of the aether, new ideas, existential thought, spirituality, and all endeavors that strive to rise above the material world. Mathers. In the tarot interpretations of Mathers, the Fool represents quittance, reparation, folly, expiation, wavering, uncertainty, and atonement. Reversed in Mathers interpretations, the Fool signifies hesitation, instability, trouble, and stagnation. Etteila. Jean-Baptiste Aliette, generally referred to as Etteila, held the Fool card to be the Folly card. It was either card 78 or card 0, and it fell in either the beginning or the end of the cycle of the cards. He interpreted it as representing dementia, eccentricity, insanity, aberrant behavior, or spiritual aberrations, intoxication, delirium, frenzy, rage, being foolishly carried away, dangerous enthusiasm, blindness, ignorance, insanity, irrational behavior, and foolish innocence. Reversed or ill-dignified, Etteila interpreted the Fool or Folly card to represent ineptitude, apathy, exhaustion, nullity, nothingness, entropy, vanity, negligence, distraction, and carelessness. A.E. Theirens. To Theirens, the Fool represented the average state of mankind, a person not yet at the stage of wisdom. The Fool represented someone walking the path of their life without paying much attention to their own self or to anything beyond themselves. Theirens believed the Fool could represent absolute fate, a man ruled by the stars and by the powers about him, rather than a man who ruled himself. Theirens held the Fool to represent zero, a person at the absolute state of unconsciousness, who would obey the forces of his life rather than his own will or a divine will of his choosing. Thus, Theirens interpreted the card as a kind of spiritual, and the word Theiren used is actually an ableist slur. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but I want to be clear, it is an ableist slur, which was dumbness. However, Theirens had an alternate interpretation of the card as well. He believed it could signify to the wise that even they could not know all things, nor could they control all things. In some ways, Theirens held the card as representing wisdom, and that it might be vain for a person to believe that all matters required their assistance or interference. Theirens also interpreted the Fool as a caution to seek balance between that which one can control and master, and that which one cannot control or master, and to discover, and what one must obey or what they can ignore. In divination, Theirens associated the Fool with the Hebrew letter shin, the motion of relative duration, and interpreted this as the meaning that the Fool could mean a person was being hurried to their doom, all unaware of the danger. The fool stands in denial of all sense, in the state of nonsense, refusing to see the danger before him. Paul Foster Case. Case did not interpret the fool as folly. Rather, he went back to the older title of the card, lemat, and associated mat with the transposition of the Hebrew word or amet, meaning truth, which I probably mispronounced, so I apologize. He referred to the fact that the crocodile in some depictions of the fool was a suggestion by Eliphas Levi, an addition to represent the vehicle of Horus and Horus himself. Case believed the fool signified someone who was in service to the spirit of truth, represented by Horus or by the Orenos, the Greek heavenly truth. In spiritual matters, Case interpreted the card as a positive sign, symbolizing originality, audacity, venturesomeness, quest for higher truths, disruption of stagnation, disturbance of habits, changes to customary modes, forced readjustment, chaos and an end to mindlessness or inaction. In material matters, Case believed the fool represented folly, eccentricity, sudden action without sufficient forethought, a lack of consideration, stupidity, and even insanity. P.D. Ospensky. Ospensky interpreted the Fool card as being the zero card, the ultimate beginning, the very start of everything. He believed the card represented an ordinary man, an uninitiated person, in a state of lower consciousness, a person who was unaware of their connections to the center of all things, unaware of their connection to the divine. He also held the card as representing the fact that every person still holds within themselves the potential to be more, to seek knowledge and wisdom, to experience the divine. All that the fool carries with him, all the symbols of mysticism, do not lose their power because the fool is unaware that they hold such power. Ospensky believed the fool could represent a person who had become exhausted, foolish and blind and mad, through their trials and the path they walked. He believed the fool carried in his bag the four symbols of the tarot: the scepter or the wand, the cup or the chalice, the sword, and the pentacle or the coin. The fool, driven to exhaustion and foolishness and to the brink of danger by life, still carried all that he would need to reawaken his spiritual existence. The tools to be wise still belong to those that carry them, though they may have forgotten their use or even forgotten that they're carrying them at all. Thus the fool represented to Ospensky an opportunity to not just carry the weight of spirituality as another of life's many burdens, but to use it to refresh and reawaken one's true self. Wow, why was that so hard to say? All right. I guess we're going to go ahead and move into the tarot interpretations used by Havencraft when we teach our students. But please keep in mind that just like how all those people only kind of agreed with each other or disagreed with each other entirely or had their own spin on things, there's nothing wrong with you having your own spin on things. And in fact, I think all students should figure out what a card generally means to them when it comes up in a reading.
We are not going to agree with any of those sources entirely, and you shouldn't either, including us.
Exactly. Make up your own damn mind. The keywords for the Fool that I tend to use are new opportunities, new beginnings, faith, hope, new challenges, uncertainty, letting go, moving forward, risk-taking, cleverness, juggling fear and faith, folly and luck. Reversed, I consider it to represent irresponsibility, bad luck, misplaced humor, foolishness, blindness, negligence, carelessness, apathy, naivety, recklessness, mania, delirium, bereavement, indiscriminate use of knowledge, unwise choices, and a person who knows better, and yet for some reason, whether whim or malice, chooses to go against their own knowledge to the detriment of themselves or others. Let's get into that a little more in depth if I can keep track of where I am in my own notes. Really, I can. Whew. Some tarot card writers insist the Fool has an inherently negative connotation and that it is more properly called the idiot. Others insist that the figure is more of a troubadour, with the person depicted on the card in travel to a new future in a far distant land, having faith that nothing will be capable of deterring them from their path and the new opportunities that they seek. The Fool represents new beginnings and new challenges, uncertain paths, and an uncertain future. Is the Fool a warning that someone is about to step off of a cliff and fall, or is it an opportunity to leap off of the cliff and fly? Many tarot readers will caution that the subject should look before they leap, while others will caution the exact opposite, that the subject should have faith and move forward in hope, all unknowing of the future. I believe that the subject should take a moment to decide which warning applies to them, with the assistance of context from the situation they are in, the other cards that the reader has drawn, and their own intuition. The Fool represents opportunity, as well as potential disaster. The Fool is about sudden change, and the balance between taking stock of one's surroundings and the influences upon their actions, and taking a leap of faith. The middle road between these two options, not to step off a cliff blindly harried by an animal, but also not to lose sight of inspiration and possibility, is all about juggling. The subject may need to juggle the balance of fear and faith, instinct and awareness. God and the devil both love a fool, and the Fool may bounce back and forth between those influences, staggered about by the vicissitudes of fate, often stumbling on the very edge of disaster, only to have it all turn out okay in the end, by the spinning of a coin or the reshuffling of the deck or the turning of the road. The Fool can mean that someone is being given a chance to fall or fly, an opportunity that if taken one way will spell disaster, and if taken another will bring a new and more wondrous future. In a reading, the Fool can represent a transformation in the subject, wherein their ego is no longer the author of the act. Whatever is to come is no longer chosen by them. They are not the architect, but rather the receiver. The Fool can also represent an opportunity for the subject to find a balance between the separation and opposition of the spiritual and intellectual elements, a cooperation between land and sky. The Fool can symbolize adventure and a leaving behind of doubt and indecision. It can represent that the subject has an opportunity to reunite with their own innocence, gain faith that things will turn out all right, or trust in their own ability to survive whatever may come, even if it may require a little bit of juggling. The subject may also be being encouraged to seek humor and joy in all things. Meaning reversed. If the energy of the Fool card is blocked or reversed, the subject may have their head in the sky, their body weighed down by the ground and by the troubles of their history, leaving them to fall to the rock below them with everything, all that the subject carries, tumbling along with them. This can be interpreted as the Fool being completely lost in hope and imagination, falling into the sky, with no way to actually walk towards anything, or as the Fool having been harried right off a cliff. The subject should question themselves on whether they were or are moving forwards blindly, with no stability or purchase to make any real progress. All the interpretations of the Fool as unwise, careless, reckless, and irresponsible apply when the Fool is reversed. Yet, fixating on the naive and disastrous decisions that got the subject into the predicament doesn't actually get the subject back out of it again. Instead, faith and hope are often needed. In the past position, the Fool can signify that a choice was made, based either in faith or folly. That choice was a risk that is still playing out with an effect on the present. In the past reversed, the aforementioned choice, the risk based on faith or folly, turned out to be based on folly. This would be the metaphorical falling off the cliff or being harried by animals. The question then becomes, did the querent already hit the bottom, or do they still have an opportunity to turn things around? In the present position, the Fool places the subject in the present mind state of the Fool, some combination of wanderlust, folly, desire for new horizons, and seeking of new opportunities. The faith in the Fool in the present position can mean that the subject is about to abandon their commitments and the constraints of their life for a new freedom or a different path, for good or for ill. The subject could be seeking advice on the fallout from having endured a cycle of such choices. It can also represent a pattern of behavior wherein the subject sort of tumbles from disaster to disaster, but somehow still always gets through it, only to have the cycle repeat again. So the subject might be getting through all of this on sheer luck. Present reversed. The Fool reversed in the present can represent that the subject is unable to find stable ground and is stumbling from disaster to disaster at the time of the reading. It can also symbolize that they are in the process of taking a leap of faith, but that it is going very badly for them, or that they are being harried into making a quick decision, when a more reasoned and considerate one could be better advised. In the future position, the Fool most likely represents the new opportunity that is coming up, and the choices that the subject will have to make on whether to pursue a new opportunity, or if they are in danger of a long, hard fall into disappointment. In the future reversed position, the subject may need to take stock of their current circumstances and seek to recognize what current decisions they are making that could lead them into a cycle of making even more hasty, instinctive, and possibly damaging decisions. In work, the Fool often represents that the subject needs to press forward and hope that the new opportunities before them will be good, and may even signify that it is a good time for the subject to start their own business. However, there is a caution that the subject needs to do so without being harried into making hasty decisions or foolish jumps. Work reversed. When drawn reversed in a work reading, the Fool can represent that the subject may have excellent instincts and ideas, but no great concrete or stable plans. The subject may also desire to start a business but feel unable to do so. The subject may also want to leave their current job and also feel unable to do so. Or it can symbolize that the subject needs to take stock of their circumstances. Are they about to jump off a cliff with no parachute? Do they have contingency plans or enough savings to pursue what they're dreaming of? Do they have a tendency to move rapidly from workplace to workplace without ever putting down any kind of stable roots? When drawn for queries of love, the appearance of the Fool in the draw may mean that the subject isn't ready for commitment yet, or that it may be time for them to leave behind the pain of their old relationships in order to move forward more freely. It can also mean that the subject's existing relationship is going to take a rather unexpected turn. Love reversed. When the Fool comes up in reverse in a love-related question, it can signify that the subject desires freedom and independence, which may be interfering with their current relationship or perpetuating a situation wherein they cannot find a committed relationship. It can also symbolize that a Fool tumbles from relationship to relationship to relationship, not actually learning anything from the various ways that it went wrong. Finances. When the Fool is drawn for queries of finances, it is wise for the subject to review their past and take stock of what has occurred before pursuing a new opportunity. The Fool may stumble into money, but fate rarely lets them keep very much of it for very long, so caution may be being advised. Finances reversed. When drawn for a query of finances, the reversed Fool is a caution that although there may be special opportunities coming up, the subject should give careful consideration, for all may not be what it appears on the surface. They need to remember that if something looks too good to be true, it probably is, and not to leap after attractive-looking opportunities that take them off of a cliff. They may be about to be harried into bad choices with negative repercussions for their financial stability. Health. The Fool card drawn for questions of health is often a positive sign. It can mean to not take silly chances, but is often said to represent an upswing in health to full recovery. It tells the subject to have faith and believe that their health can improve, despite how hard it has been for them in the past. Reversed for health may speak of caution, a need to seek other modalities of healing, a feeling that one has neglected their own personal health, or a need to possibly seek more support in their care of self. Hey Ian, because I'm paranoid, would you just make sure that this is still recording and that I haven't just been speaking? Cool. Spirituality. For questions of spirituality, the Fool can signify...
I've actually been looking over periodically to make sure that...
Oh, good. Can signify a new awakening, a new feeling of faith and trust in the divine, and a letting go of more mundane conceits. A caution could be made not to get too carried away with the new means of practicing spirituality and to instead take stock of the lessons that have been learned already. The card may also indicate that the subject has a sudden desire for deeper communion with their spiritual self and the spiritual world, but that their family and friends may not understand and may be attempting to hinder them. Spirituality reversed. The Fool card drawn ill-dignified or reversed or blocked in questions of spirituality may signify that the subject is considering leaving behind a tradition or religion that has influenced their life for some time. The Fool in reverse cautions the subject to make the decision carefully and not to act out of frustration or recklessness. It can also signify a lack of support and seeking new spiritual connections to the point of preventing those connections from forming. Or it can symbolize a badly betrayed leap of faith, where the subject risked everything, hoping a divine power would be there for them, and it wasn't. Card combinations. When the devil is drawn near the fool in a reading, the subject's naivety is bordering on disastrousness. They need to get their head out of the clouds and realize that they are in danger of hurting themselves or others. When the devil is crossing or blocking the fool, the subject is being prevented from pursuing new opportunities. When the fool is drawn with the magician, a new chance to break free and create a new life will likely be a success, so long as the fool uses all the tools at their disposal. However, if in the query the magician represents someone other than the subject or the subject's life, they should beware. The subject is likely falling for some kind of deceit. Their naivety and lack of perspective may cost them a great deal. The fool with the sun, the star, or the moon may represent inspiration and passion and new chances for insight. If the moon is drawn blocking the fool, or if the fool is reversed, or if the moon is reversed, the moon can represent deceit or manipulation, taking advantage of the fool's faith and naivete. When there are cards from the suit of swords around the fool, the subject may expect much opposition and criticism for pursuing faith and moving forward in trust rather than reason. The suit of wands about the fool in a draw reinforces the message of trusting in the divine and moving forward towards a more spiritual path, or sort of trusting in the God and devil both love a fool kind of a thing. When the suit of cups dominates a reading, look for love or relationships to be a major issue. The subject may be moving away from a bad relationship, or they may be entering into a new one blindly. When the suit of coins surrounds the fool, a risky venture may provide new opportunities, which could end in great success or great loss. Questions to answer. In what area of the subject's life are they operating entirely on faith or trust? What new opportunities may be presenting themselves? Is there something that the subject is trying to escape? If the subject had no ties to the past, what would they do and what would they pursue? Questions to answer when reversed. Is there a chance that the subject is moving forward into something blindly? Does the subject feel like they've missed an opportunity? Is there something the subject is feeling foolish about? Does the subject feel tied down or prevented from moving forward? That's all of it. So thank you for joining us, and please keep in mind that we'll be posting more of these in the weeks to come. And so if you really like this content, you should remember to like and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to comment your support.